Our forefathers didn't have a lot of these sicknesses that are now present. So some of the fears could be well placed, some could be misplaced in terms of GM. What I encourage the government and the agency to do is to go out on a sensitization program and let the people know what is genetically modified crops. Let people not fill in that void with false narrative or half-truth or even truth that are just generally harmful.
What would you have done differently?
I think the mentality of Nigerians is the first thing you want to really attack and see if they share your views and vision, right? We have the Ministry of Information and within the Ministry of Information, we have a department and an agency that actually works with the average Nigerian in terms of how to change the views of Nigerians. When people say, I will provide security, how? I will make the Naira one Naira to $1. How? It's just not possible. I will improve the police force.
Healthcare.
How? I will improve healthcare. How? When people are only bothered about their daily meals, it's very, very difficult to talk to them about good governance. And that is where you now see the weaponization of poverty.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Candid Corner, proudly brought to you by NIN65 Studios, where bold conversations meet deep insight. I am Dara Udoma. Today on our show, we have a very transformational and remarkable guest, a man whose achievement has spanned through 2 continents, the North America and Africa. 2 legal systems, the Nigerian legal system and of course the American legal system. One of the few persons who have successfully left the United States of America after a successful career, and a man who has formed a party, Nigeria for Democracy, and formed and ran for the office of a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in NFD. A man whose achievement has done so much, and right now he is returned back to his country, Nigeria, and is pursuing his career as a lawyer. Join me as I welcome Barrister Asukwo Mendie Archibong to our program. It's good to have you, sir.
Thank you so very much, Dara. Such a pleasant and important introduction. It just made me feel so very good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very good.
Thank you. It's a full house, actually. We have MC Malam in the house, and then we have Zed.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Barrister Archibong, you're welcome to Candid Corner.
Thank you so very much.
It's our pleasure to have you here today, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
So, a brief one. Let me go back to your career, your backgrounds, transitions, and your experience from the introductions you just made. So, can you walk us through your practicing experiences in America and that of Nigeria? One, then secondly, can you tell us the difference? What the key differences between the Nigerian legal system and that of the U.S. legal system?
Thank you, Chris. Popularly known as MC Malam.
Thank you very much.
It's fantastic. Look, it's a pleasure to sit with you and to have this conversation with you. One of the things that gets usually left out in my background is my degree in biochemistry before my Juris Doctor and then my Master of Laws in Intellectual Property. So that degree in biochemistry is what is significant in my ability to practice intellectual property in the United States and to have been able to go to obtain my master's in intellectual property and to have participated in a program to write out the modalities for the laws that would affect genetically modified crops in the United States of America. Now, my legal education was in California, in Sacramento, McGeorge School of Law, University of the Pacific. That's where I got my JD. And then my intellectual property was my Master of Laws in George Washington University in Washington, D.C., which is where I eventually settled, just on the neighboring state of Maryland. When it concerns the practice, I was, blessed and lucky and fortunate to have had experience in litigation. Now, litigation entails going to court. What a lot of people do not readily apprehend and understand is that only about 10 to 15% of lawyers are involved in litigation. So the majority, between 80 to 85% of lawyers, are not involved in litigation. Litigation is very challenging. You have to actually be very smart, very quick on your feet, and very versed in the art of understanding the law and being able to explain the law. If you have an issue with the law, right, and you have to explain an aspect of the law, and you explain it in a manner that your grandmother does not understand, then you've not explained it well. This is what I was taught in the law school in the US. If your grandmother cannot understand, no matter where you come from, if she cannot understand the aspect of the law that you're trying to explain to the court or to your client, then you've not explained it well. Law should not be encumbered with Latin terminologies that only a select few do understand. So Latin terminologies are actually discouraged in the United States because it can bring about confusion, at least to the general public. Whereas here we have a lot of Latin terminologies in our legal system, in how they are presented, right? Then you did ask about the differences.
The difference, yeah.
We start off with the commonalities, okay? We have just basically the same root of English law with the United States law, right? They have the same root as English law, common law. We are both common law countries, right? But if you really look at it, the legal system, the laws that you do have in the United States reflect an area of the laws in Nigeria that will surprise you, our traditional African laws.
Okay.
Very, very similar. The differences are so few and far in between. I'll give you an example that a lot of people may get to know. Let's talk about a case of child support. People might think that's an American concept, right? But if you have a child here and the mother of your child takes you to your village head or the head of your family, what do you think your village head will say? Well, this is your child. You're expected to raise or help raise the child. And how much can you pay? And are you making efforts to see the child? Are you interacting with the child? And if you don't, they may actually punish you in a certain way in the village, right? They may,
according to the custom.
According to the custom. Fantastic. It's the same thing in the US, just that it's been codified, right? So we begin from there as an example because we do get to know about the child support in the US, but we don't know much about the child support in the customary sense here in Nigeria, but it does exist, right? And then you talk about marriage, right? We have marriage in the US, we have marriage in the customary sense in Nigeria.
Okay.
They may be just different in that in the US, you're going to court to codify that marriage to be recognized by the law. In Nigeria, you are going to codify it to be recognized in the traditional sense of the word, right? Remember, traditional marriage in Nigeria is recognized just as much as any other marriage in the world, in any part of the world, including the United States. So if you're married here under the traditional sense of the word, exchange of vows, exchange of palm wines, exchange of drinks, whatever it might be, you are considered married anywhere that you go to in the world. So there are those similarities. The differences, the painful differences are sometimes glaring, right? As I may not be able to appear in court and have audience before the court because I don't have a jacket on. But if I were to have a jacket on, I would be able to appear in court, whether it is yellow or green. I could be with white striped jacket I could appear in court.
Hold on a second, Barrister. Sorry. What do you mean by a jacket on?
Just a jacket, an overcoat that a person would use, right? Okay. So an overcoat. Now I'm wearing a vest, right? You can't really just appear in an American court with a vest.
Okay.
But if I have a jacket on, an overcoat, right, that matches my suit, whether it matches or not, it's irrelevant. At least I'm appearing decent and presentable. I can appear before any court in the United States. That's not the case here. You have to dress with the neck bib. You have to put on the two-legged tie. You have to put on a white shirt with wing collar. You have to put on your wig. You have to put on gown. You have to put on black pants. And you have to put on black belt, black shoes with black socks. And, well, that's a cake. It doesn't make the person smarter. Doesn't make the person dumber. It's just a cake. Maybe it's time for us to move away from that and maybe focus on improvement in the legal system, such as let's digitize the laws of the Federation and the laws of the different states, right? I'll give you an example. I can sit here and litigate a case in the US. If I don't know the law that governs that case, I can simply go on Maryland records and pull up the laws that govern that case, okay, that issue. And the laws will be all there. And I can pull up the case file of all the cases that respond to that, all right? And proceed. So the issue of being a lawyer and being learned is not because you are exceptionally brilliant. It's just because that's what you do. You are good at what you do, right? A mechanic is good at what he does, right? A doctor is good at what he does.
True.
That's why it's called the practice of law. There is no expert. You learn every day. The practice of medicine is the human bodies are generally the same, but they are different, right? So you practice and you learn every day. But I can tell you that we have not digitized the laws of the Federation of Nigeria here in this country. Neither have we digitized, I'll use Akwa Ibom State as an example. You can't get the laws of Akwa Ibom State online. I had to buy mine once I was called to bar, right? About 85,000 naira. So if it's not digitized, it's not updated regularly. That's the issue. Because I have the book I have is the latest, but it's about 3 years old. There is no way you'll tell me that the State House of Assembly has not passed some laws in the last 3 years. If those laws have been passed, they are lost in the book. They are not included in the book, right? So that's the difference. You do not need to be exceptionally brilliant to the thinking of other people before you can practice law anywhere in the world. It's just that here you have to know where to get to go to be able to get the laws there. That I know that's a long-winded answer, but there is so much in the question that you asked that I so much want to share, right? Then you begin to look at the operation of the legal system. The legal system in Nigeria is one of apex and down, right? So think of it like a triangle. At the top, you have the Supreme Court, you have the NJC, right? And then as you come down, you have the Federal Court of Appeals, then you have the High Court, and then you have the State High Court, and then you have the Federal High Court is there already. But the issue here is that the states have a chief judge, but the chief judge is still answerable to the NJC and the chief judge of the Federation. But it's not so in the US. We have state laws, and the State Court of Appeal or Supreme Court is the highest court that you can go to on state law issues. What are state laws? Contract, breach of contract, right? Just generally when there is an impact on your rights, your fundamental rights to a certain extent, if they're impacted by the state government, you can only go that far. Armed robbery, criminal cases are generally state laws. Unless there is a federal component, which might be where a person involved in a crime crosses state lines, then the federal government might come in, right? Or it's a hate crime, or it's a crime against humanity, then the federal government might come in. But generally, if there are contract issues, the federal government or the federal court do not come in. State courts have great latitude to adjudicate cases. Federal courts have very little latitude to adjudicate cases, right? Now,
So, Barrister, sorry to cut you short. Looking at the complexity, because from what you've just explained, there's a kind of complexity of the US justice system that's practicing it. Since being called to bar here in Nigeria, have you actually been practicing?
Yes, I have. I've appeared before the court in Ikorepene. I've appeared before the court in Eket. But immediately after, the judges went on vacation, right?
Okay.
We only do have the magistrates that are in service, presiding.
So what was the experience like? How was it as, will I use the word challenging, like?
Compared to the
Yeah.
US.
Well, let me start from the infrastructure,
Okay.
right? The judges are overworked, just plain and simple. So you are going to expect to have delays. One of the first things you will notice that judges write everything that is happening in the court in longhand by themselves. It's my first experience, right? I'm used to audio recordings and video recordings.
The judge or the clerk?
The judge writes in Nigeria everything by hand.
Wow.
Your introduction, your arguments, the introduction of your clients, the plea of your clients, whatever happens in the court is written by the judge. You have to wait for the judge to finish writing before you can make the next argument. So we can't have a free-flowing conversation or argument before the court, right? Because I have to wait for the court to be able to write. And that is unfair on the judges. We've had governors, even in this state, who were lawyers. We've had attorney generals who are lawyers of this state and at the federation level, right?
Yeah.
We have had attorneys as ministers, right? So there is no reason, if we have 36 attorney generals in the Federation of Nigeria at the state level, that we cannot have audio recording of court proceedings, which is exceptionally significant and important.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example, okay? If you have a case before the court, right, and you want to appeal the case, you are now left to the mercies and caprices of what the judge wrote down, rather than what was captured on audio.
Okay.
And we pray that the judge captured everything.
Yeah.
The human factor always brings in some level of error, right? Yes. I'm not saying that we have errors in them. I'm simply saying when we introduce the human factor, we must always make room for error, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that is the first challenge that you will have, that if you say, may it please this court, my name is Nkem, then you have to wait for the judge
to write it down.
Mm. I'm appearing before this honorable court on behalf of my client, whose name is Dar. You have to wait again. As against, may it please this court, my name is Barrister Nkem. I'm appearing on behalf of my client.
That's process. Takes a long
while. So it makes you lose your train of thought and argument, right?
Yeah.
So, and it makes you reluctant to go deep into the argument that you may have before the court.
Well, Barrister,
right?
Why law in Nigeria? I mean, you have I went through your LinkedIn and social media. You have I think you have either a database
background.
Yes, programming, and then real estate. Am I correct?
Well, I do have information technology background, not real estate, but information technology background, IT. I did a lot of IT work in the United States for Kaiser Permanente Information Technology, which is the largest healthcare company in the United States. I have worked in Chevron Technology as well, which was the second largest oil company in the US, apart from Texaco Oil. But and once they combined and came together with Texaco, became the largest. I've worked at Chevron as well. It's interesting. Now, why law? Because law is there.
Sorry, I asked that question. Coming from the US, where at least measured US against Nigeria, the integrity there is on the high side compared to what we have here. That's the truth. And some people argue that the judiciary here in Nigeria is one of the problems the system is facing, because once the judiciary gets it right and calls things by their color, black, yellow, white, things will start moving. But people will say the judiciary here in Nigeria is for sale.
Is what?
For sale, for the highest bidder. So coming from a place like US, where over the years they've been able to build their judicial system to a very high level of integrity, how do you sink into the Nigerian judicial system, justice system? How?
You made two assumptions.
Okay.
You talked about where the integrity is so high, meaning that the integrity here is lower. That's an assumption. And
It's not an assumption.
It is. Let's not debate it. It is. Because we don't have statistical evidence to back
prove,
it up, right?
yes.
I've lived in both societies.
Okay.
At least I've lived in the US for 35 years
All
of my life, right? So it's been a while. I've practiced in the US for at least 18 years in the legal system. I've been through their legal system and admitted into the US Supreme Court. You're not admitted into the US Supreme Court because you're a lawyer. In Nigeria, you're admitted into the Nigerian Supreme Court because you're a lawyer, right? In the US, you have to at least would have gone through some years, and then you will be sponsored by a motion to be admitted into the U.S. Supreme Court, right?
Okay.
It's highly revered area to practice. And then when you talk about the judicial system here being at the bottom rung of the ladder in terms of integrity, it's still an assumption as well. Yeah, because we generally make those assumptions, right? And it's injurious to our legal system. So it's well that we stay away from those assumptions. And
sorry, when you say assumption,
hold on. We stay away from the assumptions and deal with cases that are established where there is a lack of integrity and corruption, which occurs in every part of the world, including the United States.
Okay.
Now, is the U.S. legal system stronger than the Nigerian legal system? It's been over almost 300 years in existence. We are only about 65 years in existence. You can't compare both. Okay, but do we have corruption in both systems? Yes. Do we have men of integrity in both systems? Yes. Do we have challenges in both systems? Yes. We don't recruit our judges from heaven. We recruit them from the same places the police force recruit them from, their own staff from the Nigerian public. So expect that whatever you have in the judicial system, you're going to reflect where we recruit them from. But just from my years of observation, having interacted with the legal system in Nigeria closely since 2017, I've seen them to be men of high integrity. Forget about what you read in the news media. It becomes perverse when you add the political pressure at election times. It becomes perverse. Even in the US, it becomes perverse. That's why you have rulings in the US Supreme Court, and they take time to tell you that this person was appointed by a Republican president, or this person was appointed by a Democratic president. And you can actually see their philosophy in life and how they rule in regards of that philosophy, right?
Do they practice seniority system like we do here?
No, and that is the best thing that I've ever come to see in the US legal system. That's a fantastic question. In the Nigerian legal system, it is what is holding us down. It is holding so many of our young people.
That means we are still coming back to the integrity I spoke about.
No, that's not integrity. That is a form of practice here that you and I may not agree with, but some people do agree with it. It is ingrained and imbued in the legal system. It is part of the law that this person is your senior in the practice of law by virtue of having been called before you, right? But it's stymies the growth of the young one, right? Where if a person has been called to bar, say was called to bar in 2015, the person that was called to bar in 2013 gets their case heard before the one that was called to bar in 2015. That's absolutely wrong. In the US, your case is called alphabetically or in any manner that the clerk so desires, right? You get to know where your case is. They give you a list and they call it by that order. So you know when your case is coming up. Now, why is the seniority system, especially in how it is called, the cases are called in Nigeria, improper? Because it does prejudice the client, right? If a person who has been practicing for 20 years has their case called before my case, it makes the clients maybe think, wow, okay, I should have gone with the one that has been practicing for 20 years. But I can tell you emphatically that the number of years of practice does not make a person an excellent lawyer in a certain area.
Okay, Barrister, I wanted to ask this very important question. You have a strong background in the United States immigration law. I want to ask categorically, how has that field evolved in the last decade?
Oh, I think Trump has upended so many things now. So, for the first time, we are beginning to see there is an office of denaturalization.
Okay.
That was set up by Trump in his first term. Biden did close down that office. Trump has quietly opened that office again. Now, to denaturalize a U.S. citizen, okay, a naturalized U.S. citizen, it has to be for crimes against humanity or having participated in the Holocaust. It has to be something that serious. But now Trump has expanded to criminal actions engaged by an individual that can bring about denaturalization. What are the criminal actions? One, if you lie on your application to become a naturalized U.S. citizen, then that can lead to a person being denaturalized, right? Very rarely used, but Trump is putting it out there. That's why when Elon Musk did have that little bit of a tiff with Trump, Trump said, you know, I could denaturalize him.
Send him back to South Africa.
Send him back. Yeah, well, he has a Canadian citizenship now as well. So believe me, they did look at his forms. And if they found out any lie about him in that, as written down by him, he would have been in very hot soup. So I don't just practice the immigration law, but it's been part of my practice. What has happened is that there's been an influx of people into the United States.
Okay.
And successive governments have been unable to curtail the influx of people into the United States. No country would accept that kind of an influx. It changes the character of the country. And it's unfair to those who have taken the legal process to get into the country. It's unfair to them. When you allow people who have not gone through the legal process to get into the country and settle down and enjoy the benefits of a naturalized citizen. So Trump is trying to stop that. Now, the cases before the immigration courts are so many over the years that a person's case could take 10 years and is not being resolved. 10 to 15 years is not being resolved. That's the only area of the practice of law in the US that takes so long, because we do not have enough administrative law judges, right? Immigration law judges. But now Trump is trying to short-circuit that process by arresting anyone. First of all, if you have a criminal conviction, you're gone. If you have a criminal charge, it used to be we will wait for you to be convicted by court. But now if you just have a criminal charge, you're gone. If you overstay your visit to the United States, you're gone. If you have a student visa but you're not on full-time academic program, you're gone. They are looking for everywhere to be able to remove people from the United States. My practice did include immigration law, bankruptcy law, contract, agency law, and also corporate law as well. I more or less acted as outside counsel and in-house counsel to a lot of companies. And just litigation issues. The litigation could be any aspect of the law, but just litigation issues. And I really hope I do have that kind of experience here. But one of the things I think Nkem did ask about the actual experience I've had going to court. A lot of times I've been to court. and this is not a knock on them. Prisoners have not been presented for their cases. Okay?
Here in Nigeria,
In
or over
Nigeria.
there.
Here in
Here in
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
And I hope we can resolve this issue, because when a prisoner is not presented before the court for his plea arraignment, it is now continued. Okay? The case is now continued, and it's not generally continued to the next week. It's continued maybe a couple of months ahead.
2 to 3 months.
So, yes. So, for example, let's assume that a person under the care and custody of the Department of Corrections was supposed to be presented in July of this year before the court, and they failed to do so for whatever reason. It could be legitimate reasons. The car's broken down, no petrol, whatever the reasons might be.
Health conditions.
Well, generally, if it's a health condition, then they would have written to the court and then continued the case and so on. But in July, if you were not presented, then the next opportunity will be when the judges come back, right? And that's sometime in September, October, or November. That's when your case will now be presented again. So, and I saw a lot of that happen, and I mean a lot. So the people did not even have the opportunity to be before the court and take a plea. Now they are going to take a plea sometime in October or November or early part of December before the holidays kick in again. And that is where I would say we really need to make sure we don't trample on the rights of the people that have been accused. They are just merely accused. They are not convicted. I mean, it could be heinous crimes. I've taken on rape cases. I've taken on armed robbery cases. They have the presumption of innocence. It doesn't mean that I will eat and dine and wine with them, but they do have the presumption of innocence. And if they are not presented before the court, it could just be just unfair to the dispensation of justice in regards to their case. They continue in the custody of the Department of Corrections.
Barrister, speaking about immigration, I'm sure you agree with me that we have in Africa now, we have a movement, I call it a movement tsunami or immigration tsunami, where Africans there's a mass exodus of Africans to Europe, to the US. So I want to ask, do you support globalization, or would you rather have people stay in their various countries and make things work?
Well, here is the thing. Don't always be so sure I would agree with you.
No. You should have told Barrister that you are.
The Japa syndrome has really hit us, right? People go to where they feel
they'll have greener pastures.
Yes. And the television can be deceptive. I believe you can be wealthy, you can be rich, you can be prosperous, you can be successful wherever you are in the world.
You
right?
find yourself.
Wherever you are. And you can be poor in any part of the world. Believe me, the level of poverty you will see in some areas in the United States, you've never seen it in your entire life.
True. If
it's difficult for you, you can pick up the phone and call a friend and say, please, 2,000. He had. Okay? We have sympathy for one another. Yeah. That's going to touch on that your general assumption of integrity. I'm going to kind of piggyback on that as well. Okay. We are one of the most caring people on the planet Earth. Nigerians are. Yeah. We really do look out for one another. But the government does not necessarily look out for us to the extent and at the level that we expect, right? Social services from the government has failed us. Yeah. I mean, that's not a debatable argument, right? If you want to debate it, go on the street, you'll see children begging and selling. Go on the street, you'll see mentally challenged people lying down on the street corner in the middle of the road. That's the failure of government in terms of social services. But in Nigeria, you want to get married, your friends step in. Your mother-in-law dies, your friends step in. Your child is born, your friends step in. Your mother or your father dies, your friends step in. Your son gets a graduation and there's going to be a party.
I want to shoot a film like I want to do, and then 65 wants to partner.
Yes. everything.
Yes.
We have taken on the social net,
Yeah.
okay, for one another. Now, even your staff, if your staff is sick, you might as well just give them some treatment. Otherwise, you'll be the loser. There is just no healthcare system in Nigeria that will stand up and assist them to that extent. So then we dovetail to the issue of integrity. If you have a car, you know your mechanic by Tony Mechanic. You don't know his full name. You don't know his house. You don't know his name. You don't know if he has been cleared by the police, but you hand him over your car to come and drive and go and fix and bring back. And then you pay him money as well, trusting he will use that money to buy the correct spare part, put in the car and bring it back. You dare not try it anywhere else. You dare not try it anywhere else. In the United States, it just would fail you. That's why people that work for companies on that level of home entry or car retrieval are usually bonded.
Okay.
And they are bonded with a high amount of money, and there is a bond process that they have to go through. No criminal background, no misdeeds, perfect credit score, and a certain level of certification and training that they have gone through. But in Nigeria, we deal on the trustworthiness of the person. If you introduce your mechanic to me, I trust that mechanic.
Based on the trust I have for
Based on the trust.
Yes.
Perfectly.
Mhm.
All right.
Now, I don't want one last thing before you come
Okay.
in. But if you have ever imported a car into Nigeria, you'll find out that you've never met the person that has cleared your car. But you most likely would have transferred 1 million or 2 million or 3 million
That's the case, maybe.
naira to the person, but you've never met them. And that is the highest degree of trust.
All right, Barrister Archibong, thank you very much, because I must confess that you're actually hitting the nails at the head straight. And I want to ask you 3 straight questions. I'm going to touch back at your legal profession. I'm going to go back to the immigration. I'm still going to go back to politics. So I'm going to hit you with 3 straight questions. 1, if you are given an opportunity right now in Nigeria to change the entire legal system, for over decades, you've been practicing. What would you rather change in the legal system in Nigeria? 1. 2, back to immigration. How do the American immigrations treat the Northern Americans, or rather the Asians? How do they treat them? And even the Africans as well. Thirdly and lastly, politics. In 2019, I knew you ran for an election.
Yeah, NFD.
In a political, I want to believe that politically, you funded the political party.
Yes.
You brought the political party. What was your experience, and what inspired you? What inspired you to say you want to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Oh, fantastic. Let me address the one of change with the legal system. Hold on to the other 2 and remind me as I go along. But the first change I would like to see, let's break down the federal structure of the legal system and make the states more powerful. Let lawyers be registered in the state and not at the federal level. Let states control lawyers. You're going to have better behaving lawyers, right? If a lawyer can fly in from Lagos State and handle a case in Akwa Ibom State, the lawyer should be registered as a practicing lawyer and pass the bar for practicing lawyers in Akwa Ibom State. So not everybody should be able to practice in Akwa Ibom State. That's what happens and obtains in the US. If I take the bar in Maryland, right, which I did, I passed the bar in Maryland, which I did. For me to be able to practice in Washington, D.C., I have to actually take the bar again. But merciful, I didn't have to, because my scores were exceedingly high in taking the bar in Maryland. So now I applied to join the Washington, D.C. bar, and I was waived in based on my scores, right? But I'm now registered in both Maryland and Washington, D.C. for me to be able to practice in Maryland and Washington, D.C. That's the first step. Now, in the federal court, you can't practice in the federal court unless you are registered in the state in which that federal court is cited, right? So I can practice in the federal court in Maryland. For me to be able to practice in the federal court in Washington, D.C., I must be admitted into Washington, D.C. Bar and then apply to be admitted into the Federal District Court. So audience is not automatic, unlike in Nigeria, where audience is automatic. So there is a better regulation of attorneys, right? To the extent that now I can call myself, or people can refer to me as the bar in Nigeria.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that before I was called to the bar, because it would be misrepresentation of myself as an attorney who is licensed to practice in Nigeria. I'm still subject to the laws in the United States. You can call me anything, but not a lawyer. You follow? So I'll be very quick to, if you are coming to talk to me about a case, I have to be very, very quick to tell you, I'm not licensed to practice in Nigeria. I'm sorry, I can't even hear you. Even as a friend, I can't even hear you, because it's so serious that miscarrying yourself as a lawyer anywhere in the world is wrong. I sit on the peer review panel, which is the disciplinary panel in Maryland. And so I know a lot of these laws, right? So breaking it down from the federal structure to the state structure and then removing the seniority, and this might be controversial, do away with the SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Let everybody be on equal playing field, right? I didn't have that level, I wouldn't say discrimination, but it comes close to that. I didn't experience that when I started my practice in the United States, right? I was able to handle any case that my client felt I can handle, and I felt I can handle. The only thing the law says, you must handle the case that you accept competently, diligently, and with a reasonable care and expertise that a person who is a reasonable lawyer can exhibit, right? So that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question was about immigration.
Yes,
And well, when you go visiting someone's house, how do you expect to be treated?
No, but for instance, if I have to come, if I visit N65 to go in his house, the way he received me, he put me nice.
No.
I think that's because of your
the same way he
relationship
would treat me in his
with
house,
him.
it might not be the same way Zeg is going to treat me in his house.
Did he actually accept you?
Here is the
No, I
thing.
think-
United States is a nation of immigrants, right?
Okay.
And they have succeeded to the extent that they have accepted very good and highly skilled and qualified immigrants, right? And they have that program, highly skilled program for immigrants. Now, if you are a professor, you can go through that program. You just have to establish that you have excelled in a certain area and they will accept you, right? If you are a footballer, they'll accept you. If you are a scientist, they would accept you, right? Any area that you've excelled in.
Professionally.
Good. Now, if I were to come to your house and you know I'm a highly skilled lawyer, right? You'd welcome me. Now, the person that is, I'm not suggesting that others are, but the person that is just an average person, you're not going to welcome them that way, right? Then, if you know that this person is a crook and is coming to you, I'm not suggesting they are, but if you know that this person is possibly a crook, you're not going to welcome that person.
But these are individuals I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Individual, not a country of the nation.
Okay.
For instance, I am in Nigeria. He's from Eastern Asia. He has a program. That's what he wants to go to. How do they treat? How do the American immigration treat me as a Nigerian African and this man who is from Asia?
No,
Both with their professions and what have you.
no difference. Follow the law. Just follow the law. Apply for a visa, student visa. So Nkem wants to go and be a student, apply for a student visa. Nkem wants to go and work, apply for a highly skilled individual visa. Nkem wants to go and visit, apply for the B2 visa. Whatever you want to do, apply for the visa. Now we are talking about illegal immigrants who run across the border. Okay, we are talking of a macrocosm in regards of a microcosm. So the microcosm would be your house. You open your bedroom and you see a man sitting there. How would you feel? The man didn't come through the front door. The first thing you do is leave, right? The home is the castle. The country is the castle for a country, right? There are borders. So when we are talking of illegal immigrants, we are talking of people who actually did cross the border illegally, okay? They didn't stand in line and obtain the necessary permits to be able to stay or enter the country and stay in the country. That's the first set of illegal immigrants that we do have, right? Then the second set would be those who were actually paroled into the country. Parole meaning they were accepted into the country, but they overstayed their welcome. Hey, come on. You've had friends that have visited you and just for 2 hours, then they've overstayed their welcome, right? Just 2 hours. So these are people that have overstayed their welcome. But when it concerns different treatments for different people, Africans, Asians, Cubans, and so on, it generally does not play out the way that the media makes people outside of the United States want to think. There is, for Cuba, there is the wet foot, dry foot policy. If you come from Cuba and you are caught or stopped at sea, you will be returned to Cuba. But if you touch land only by your foot, you will be paroled into the United States. That was a Soviet-era antagonistic policy to try to create division amongst the people in Cuba. And so many people lost their lives traveling through the Cuban Straits, trying to make it to Florida, which is only about 50 miles apart. People did criticize that policy, but it was based on the fact that Cuba was a satellite country for Union Soviet Socialist Republic, Russia, and America, was the flagship of the Allies, right? Yeah. You may have those kind of policies, but generally, if you follow the law, you're not going to have a challenge in terms of the immigration, how it impacts you. But the other part of it, and I understand where you're coming from, the other part of it is perception of a people. If a certain country, the individuals there are perceived to be criminally minded, then of course you are going to have a biased view. And the country has a right to have a biased view of the people from that country who are trying to get into their country, right? If you have so many people with fraudulent bank documents to establish they have these funds, people who are trying to game the system, beat the system, the immigration process, you're going to have a higher level of scrutiny and fewer people that are admitted. If you have a country where the majority of the people say, we are going for a visit, and then they overstay their welcome, you're going to have the United States say, show me a higher degree of affiliation or affinity for you and your country, such that if we give you or if we grant you this visa, you are going to come back. The common terminology is great ties to your home country.
Okay, sir. We don't intend to make this podcast longer than necessary. So let's come back to politics in Nigeria.
Fantastic.
So that we can actually...
I think that's where he was going.
Yeah, party short, and then we call it a wrap on this very program. So politics in Nigeria, the political party you formed, and then you contested for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a candidate in the party. I want you to take us through that journey.
Well, one of my greatest regrets was not defeating the incumbent, late President Muhammadu Buhari. I wish I had defeated him and become president of Nigeria. I had so many ideas. I was bursting with ideas, with zeal, with vigor, and ways to change the mentality.
What would you have done differently?
I think the mentality of Nigerians is the first thing you want to really attack and see if they share your views and vision, right? We have the Ministry of Information, and within the Ministry of Information, we have a department and an agency that actually works with the average Nigerian in terms of how to change the views of Nigerians. When people say, I will provide security, how? I will make the Naira $1 to $1. How? It's just not possible. I will improve the police force. How? I will improve healthcare. How? When people are only bothered about their daily meals, it's very, very difficult to talk to them about good governance. And that is where you now see the weaponization of poverty. Okay? So people are no longer interested in good governance. They are just interested in, this is my turn. this is my village turn. This is the turn of my local government. And they expect whoever is elected to bring money back for them or to bring some level of goodies. Well, if people expect you to bring money back to them, where are you going to get money from? All over the world, politicians are not paid highly, but all over the world, politicians have access to more money than any human being on earth. And you can see it. So the agency of national orientation, anyway, National Orientation Agency under the Ministry of Information has a large part to play in the orientation of Nigerians. I wish I had made it to become president of Nigeria. I would have really used that agency to change the orientation of Nigerians such that they do see themselves invested in the Federation of Nigeria and the outcome of any government project. I'll give you an example. No matter what you do, you can electrify the roads, put solar-powered lights from point A to point B. If the people of those communities affected, who are enjoying the solar power, if they don't buy into that project and say, this is our own, and we're going to protect it, come back in 6 months or a year, they would have stolen the batteries, the boxes. Yes, I think it's called iron condemn. Right? You'll be surprised. So you are blowing against the wind. That would have been one of the first things to do so that people will buy into the idea of a different and a more prosperous federation called Nigeria. If we do recall, during the Obasanjo era, we did invest so much into the power sector, so much, but nothing happened. We've invested so much into the Nigerian police force. There's been marginal improvement, but not to the extent that we would really like. We've invested a lot into the building of roads, so much into the construction of roads, but it's just marginal improvement.
Yeah, Barrister, sorry. Speaking about 2019 election, during the time leading to the presidential election, I and my peers were like, whenever an election comes up, we always beam our light on the new players. And that was when I came across you as a new player. We're like, so when we see new players, we want to actually know if they are for real or they are just mirage. And there is this thing about Nigerian politicians. There's what they call, I think I'm losing words.
Loco.
No, not
It's my turn.
a kind of entrance.
Okay.
Political entrance, or we want to make a political entrance statement. Someone might run for an office he doesn't actually mean to run for, but just because he wants to make a political statement, like an entry, he wants to sign in. He knows he's not going to get his office, right? But he's trying to make an entry so that his name gets into the minds of people. So that by the time he now actually wants to run for an office he really wants to run for, he won't look like a newcomer. So that was how we saw you then. So I was like, okay. So after the election, and I followed up, my mindsets, my thoughts about you started changing because I started watching your interviews, started digging deep, and I knew you were a different breed of politicians. You won't blame us. We're already used to that's the kind of life or the kind of mindset politicians have, built or implanted into us. So we have these trust issues among when someone comes up to run for office, like, a new person, them again. So, but over the years, I'm now seeing you differently. I watched a few of your interviews where you've been called upon on several occasions to, explain or give advice based on different events that happen in different parts of the country, and you the way you dissected it, so I was convinced that this is not your regular Nigerian politician.
That's if you're even speaking. Let me, and thank you so very much. I didn't feign interest in the presidency. I sincerely, with all my heart, believed. I never one day went to kneel down to plead or beg with any politician to sponsor.
No God for that reason.
No, I didn't have any. Everything that happened with Nigeria for democracy was spearheaded by me, and the financial burden was on myself. I never begged for one kobo one day from anyone whom I did promise anything, right? And I didn't run so that I'll be compensated anywhere else, right? You know, you run to put out your name, and then you actually now come back to a councillor of your hometown, which is still a position that I honor as well, because it's a position you can make an impact, right? But I sincerely believed I had something to offer to this country. Now, if I could not make it as a president, okay, I couldn't become the president of Nigeria, what other logical thing could I offer this country where no other person would be able to tell me what to do or what not to do? Becoming a lawyer in Nigeria. That's why I stayed back. I started the process of becoming a lawyer in August of 2022. That's when I applied. I got admitted into the Nigerian Law School BARR Part 1, January of 2023. I passed that BARR Part 1 and I got admitted into the Nigerian Law School BARR Part 2, January 2024. I passed the Nigerian Law School BARR Part 2, 2025 in May, and got admitted, admitted is what we call it, but called to bar by the Nigerian Supreme Court on the 9th of July 2025. So it took me 3 years, right, to be able to go through the process of being called the bar, right? And that process saw me living on campus with 2 other roommates in a room. Okay, I'm not too big to stay with other fantastic aspiring law students, but it was a humbling experience. Anything that you know about being on campus in Nigeria, just know that it happened right there. Fetching water, power outage, the fan being, anything, the bed break, anything you can just imagine, just know that it happened in that process of me becoming a lawyer. But I had a set of roommates were just fantastic. They were just the best I could have dreamt of. And the other thing was, I was just, apart from going to Abuja for BARR Part 1, I was just so lucky to be assigned a campus in River State, Port Harcourt, River State. That was very close, built by Wike, right? Yeah. So that was the blessing that I had. It's a fantastic campus. It's modern. It has air conditioning.
Sorry, you own your own law firm in Maryland, right? US.
Yes, I do. Archibong Law Firm. It's still going on in practice. We still accept clients, but we accept clients on the corporate level as well. And I still practice over there.
So do you own one here in Nigeria?
You don't need to own a law firm in Nigeria to have audience. You just need to be able to pass the bar, pay your practicing fee, register with the NBA, and you can be granted audience. Now, because the practice of law is also a business, it's advisable to have a law firm if you want to practice in Nigeria here, or just assign yourself with another law firm as an associate. But I'm in the process of registering a law firm here in Nigeria. It does take time.
Okay, like I said before, I never intended to take this very podcast longer than necessary. So I would love to have, I don't know if Malam has any other question, because
I think it's going to be a very brief one before we
very well.
Wrap.
Yes.
Okay. Back to politics, respectfully, Barrister Archibong. Do you wish to run for another office politically in Nigeria or in the state?
One of my heartfelt desire is to be able to serve this country in any capacity that God places on me. But to run for any office, that 2019 race took a toll on me, that unless you were interested in that race and you were with me through that race, you wouldn't even advise me to go through
Were
that
you
process.
compensated, cash-wise or by appointment?
No, I didn't run because I wanted to be compensated financially or by appointment. I ran because I had a clear and concise vision about what I would like to see happen in Nigeria so that we can transform the country from where it was in 2019 to where we should be. Obviously, some might argue that we are better off today than we were in 2019. It might be better off for them. Some might argue, and to a certain extent, I might lean that way, that we are worse off today than we were in 2019. Not to talk about where we were in 2015, that we are worse off where we were in 2015 today. But generally, Nigerians are resilient, but it's not, I would say, let us not be resilient anymore. Let the government just do the right thing in terms of good governance.
So, Barrister, do you currently have any contracts running with this present administration?
I have no contact with any government in Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
No contact, or that means no contract.
Oh.
I have never applied to any contract. I've never applied for any position. I've never applied to see anybody in the Federation of Nigeria.
Okay, before we round up, you mentioned the GMO,
Genetically modified crops, yes.
Yeah, one of your. I want you to tell our audience a little bit about it. What are the advantages, and is there any advantage, disadvantage?
Well, if you the first one would be corn or maize or millet, right? Okay. The genetically modified crops usually are produced by a company called Monsanto. And they are licensed to farmers, right? Those crops are licensed to farmers. So it means the farmer does not own them. And the reason that they are genetically modified they are called genetically modified is very simple. They are genetically modified to be able to resist pests, to be able to produce high yield in terms of when you plant them. So you may have corn or millet that is planted and you have the corn ear that is bigger than the normal one. And the usual insect, beetle and so on that would ravage the corn in your farm cannot ravage that particular corn because it's been genetically modified to repel those
Most
people
would argue that what insects refuse to eat, humans shouldn't eat.
Well, there is a point in there, in there, but you want to support whatever your arguments are with facts, right? I prefer natural food, which we do have a lot in Nigeria, but we also do have the incoming of GMO crops, and there is an agency that actually works to regulate genetically modified crops and the importation of those crops here in Nigeria, and they are doing well. But the dangerous part is the licensing. So if I am a company that produces genetically modified crops and you are a farmer and I license my corn to you, a certain number of or kilogram of corn, next year, after you've gotten your yield, for you to plant it again, you have to obtain licensing from me. It means you have to pay me money again. So the yield, if you sell it, is yours. But if you want to plant some of it, you have to get the licensing permit from me.
Some people will argue that these GMO crops, they have their fears. You know, people have said that some, well, I would say they are rumors because they are not factual. Some can be traced to cancer, some are cancerous, you know, and they have their fears. Please just light it on spoon.
Yeah, shed no light.
You know, whenever food changes for a group of people, you're going to have a different set of illnesses that come along with it. We didn't have cancer before. We have canned food. We have different kind of sicknesses in Nigeria, right? Yeah. Our forefathers didn't have a lot of these sicknesses that are now present. So some of the fears could be well placed, some could be misplaced in terms of GM. What I encourage the government and the agency to do is to go out on a sensitization program and let the people know what is genetically modified crops. Let people not fill in that void with false narrative or half-truth or even truth that are just generally harmful, right? People have talked about the genetically modified crops affecting human beings health-wise, right?
Yeah.
It's possible. Okay, the same way that canned food would affect us negatively in this world, the same way that sardine would affect us negatively, right? The same way that Maggi would affect us negatively. Anything that is artificial, anything that you change the constitution of, has the potential to affect us positively and affect us negatively. Even medication has contraindications, right? Negative aspect of it, it can eat you or it can make your hair fall out. Certain things can happen. The government should actually, that agency should actually sensitize the Nigerian public and maybe label some things as GM, right?
Okay.
The United States is fighting a hard battle to label any genetically modified crop as GM, so you know, and natural, untouched. The natural is always going to be more expensive than the GM crops. So that should give you a clue as to what you're buying.
Okay.
If you're buying something that is a GM labeled for 4,000, believe me, the natural one will be between 6,000 and 8,000. You understand?
Yeah.
So pick what you want. There you are. Go ahead. Aside from that, the GM crops actually have a greater resilience and are able to grow in difficult environment and terrain, right? So if you plant GM crops and you plant the natural crops side by side, you may come out and see that the natural crops are not doing as well as the GM crops, which has a tendency to grow very quickly and sustain themselves in adverse conditions, right? It's just like the best way to think of it is, think of the native goat and think of the invasive species of the goat that we have here in Akwa Ibom State. The native goat just can't compete.
Yes.
If it eats waterproof, what happens? It's gone. But the invasive species can eat waterproof and nothing comes out. It passes it out. If the native goat does not eat the leaves, it's a difficult prospect for it. I just don't know the name in English, and I prefer to call it ikum, right?
But that's the truth.
Yeah, I just don't know. But if it eats anything else, if you present it with anything else, it will bleat from morning till night and refuse to eat it. One other thing before I just end is, if the native goat sees caterpillar, it will not eat anything around that area.
That's true.
But the invasive species will eat that caterpillar. So there are always going to be advantages and disadvantages in both instances, where you have the genetically modified crops and where you have the natural occurring crops.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barrister Archibong Asukwo Mendie. What they say is worth doing is worth doing well. But before we wrap up on the Candid Corner by Nane 65 Studio, we'd love to have your parting shot.
Well, I wish every Nigerian a fantastic rest of the year 2025 and a fantastic beginning of 2026. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, and Malam, your parting shot.
Well, my parting shot for today's Candid Corner is always, do not look down on anybody unless you're looking at the person's shoes.
Okay.
Well, finally, I get to meet Barrister Asukwo Archibong. I've been following his interviews since 2019, and finally, so it's an honor and a privilege to me. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you, MC Malam. Thank you, Zeg. And I want to say, in a world where you can be anything, anything, I want to urge you to choose to be kind. I still remain your host, Dara Odoma. Have a fantastic weekend. Love you from Candid's Corner.